Hi everyone, my name is Paul Youngbluth. Now, with multiple years experience in the audience research business, tracking, monitoring and analysing TV and film content from around the world, I recently began a new UK-based script development team known as ScripteaseTV. We have stretched our creative wings and decided to use that knowledge to create new IP, using our understanding of audiences' likes and dislikes and the complex landscape that is the global content marketplace. Now, in the session today, I'm going to look at 6 international film and TV projects and hopefully offer you some insights into what can make a good idea great and what are some of the key factors that come into play when the audience has to make choices. To view or not to view, to paraphrase one particularly iconic scriptwriter. Now, while the creative magic that we all know when we see it is hard to tangibly crystallize, despite the best efforts of the Netflix algorithm, what I also want to consider today is how evidence-based thinking can identify the consistent themes, factors and elements that are central to how human beings, otherwise known as the audience, make sense of story and character. Equally, how such a process can help measure the current mood of the audience, a factor that can impact on commercial potential. And not forgetting how the commercial and artistic opportunities can come together in the most effective manner. So let's begin with the Lars von Trier title from 2011, Melancholia. Now, to recap the basic plot. The film is divided into 2 parts, the first following Justine, as played by Kirsten Dunst, on her wedding day, and part 2 centering more on her sister Claire in the period after Justine's collapse into depression. Now, part 1 focuses on the less than harmonious festivities at the wedding party, which is being held at a luxurious castle owned by Justine's brother-in-law and Claire's husband, John, but the augurs are not good. Justine and her new husband Michael are delayed on their journey to the castle. The feeling of disharmony continues, and Justine keeps avoiding taking centre stage on what should be her big day, much to Claire and John's annoyance. Now, Justine's employer, Jack, announces her promotion to art director of his advertising firm and further ramps up the pressure on Justine by announcing his expectation that she will create a new campaign on this day of all days. Now, we slowly realise that Justine is in the throes of an existential depression. And ultimately Jack leaves in a fury when Justine explains her disgust with him, while Michael leaves having realised that their marriage has fallen at the first hurdle. Now, part 2 sees Justine return to stay with Claire and John as her depression begins to take its toll. Meanwhile, we learn that a rogue planet, Melancholia, has appeared from behind the sun, and that according to the scientists' calculations, it will pass in close proximity to the Earth. And Claire looks anxiously at Melancholia's path on the internet, learning of a predicted collision with the planet Earth. And ultimately, the rogue planet collides with Earth, engulfing Justine, Claire and her young son Leo, and the rest of humanity in a sea of flames. Here's a short trailer that was used upon its original release.
We're alone. Life is only on Earth. And not for long.
Justine and Mike.
Never seen you look so happy.
Enjoy it while it lasts. I myself hate marriages.
She ruined my wedding. I will not look at her.
Is everybody in your family stark raving mad?
I thought you really wanted this, but I do. What star is that?
Melancholia is just gonna pass right in front of us, and it's gonna be the most beautiful sight ever.
He's gonna know how different.
What did you expect? I'm afraid of that stupid planet.
Dad said there's nothing to do.
Then he's forgotten about the magic. I want us to be together when it happens.
A little ambiguous, but certainly big on star names, and the promise of a visual spectacle, told through Von Trier's unique artistic prism. Now, this was the second title in director Von Trier's so-called Depression trilogy, the others being Antichrist and Nymphomaniac. And the connecting theme for the three very different movies is the idea of exploring different manifestations of his own experience of depression using female alter egos. In terms of box office performance, Melancholia drew a North American total of around about €3 million, with the international slice being a much more significant €18 million, around 86% of its earnings. Now, Von Trier truly is an international brand. All of his big recent titles have shown this kind of bias. Now, with a budget estimated at €9 million and a worldwide box office of around €21 million, Melancholia can be considered a solid performer. However, and as importantly, on its premiere in 2011 at the Cannes Film Festival, it was received with considerable critical acclaim. Kirsten Dunst received the festival's Best Actress award for her performance, which was a common area of praise amongst the critics. And although it has found detractors, many critics and film scholars have considered the film to be a personal masterpiece. And it is featured in multiple listings of the best films of 2011, the best films of the 2010s, and the best films of the 21st century. So, on an economic and critical level, the film must be considered a success. But what is it that drove Melancholia to this meeting point of art and commerce? Well, clearly Von Trier himself is an important component, bringing with him something of a bad boy reputation, allied to a recognition that he is a director of unique qualities, loved by some, less so by others, but always provocative, inventive, iconoclastic and divisive. And then there is the rich visual dimension itself, from the homages of great works of art such as Millet's Ophelia, which is echoed by the shot of Justine floating in a stream in her wedding dress, to the micro scenes that appear in the prelude, shot in super slow motion to magnificent effect. But what else? At this point, it is worth underlining a fundamental difference between the one-off experience that a movie is versus an ongoing TV series. While a TV series has time to build its character base, allowing them to evolve and build their various facets, a movie has no such luxury. As a result, while TV series are closely dependent on their success on characters and how the writers create those characters, a movie is far more reliant on the intrigue aroused by the story space it occupies. Now, in the case of Melancholia, this is something of a plus, as many of the characters on display are neither especially well developed nor especially appealing in their own right. Now, the two most important characters are the sisters Justine and Claire, and they offer very different points of view based on their personal mental states of mind. Now, Justine's collapse into a personal depression is unexplained and perhaps unexplainable, but clearly her pain is very real, and her experience has fundamentally changed her outlook on life and its meaning. Now, Claire's somewhat nervous state of mind is only really alluded to, but seems to be based on her general anxiety, to the extent that her husband's supposed cure is to keep her away from the threat posed by too much surfing on the internet. Now, we constantly hear about how prevalent depression is. The mental health crisis is a common headline. And as such, there is an underlying awareness about its prevalence and a potential curiosity surrounding its manifestation on a deeply personal level. However, the track record of how cinema deals with mental health has tended to be either to stigmatise or exploit such conditions, and performances have tended to suffer accordingly. The Melancholia offers a more complete and accurate depiction, rooted in von Trier's experience in dealing with his own depression. Now, some might want to see how this mental state affects a character, or how close the experience is to something we ourselves have encountered. And certainly many sufferers have developed a close personal connection to the film. It is also interesting to note that the authenticity factor is something that the audience rates very highly, and by approaching this central theme so accurately, von Trier has perhaps inadvertently found a way of tapping into an important audience preference and sidestepped the usual cliches. So while it's not necessarily entertainment per se, it can deliver a significant conscious or subconscious resonance. And what the audience can also respond to is how Justine's state of mind conditions her reactions to the other key narrative theme, the global apocalypse. Offering a counter to the potentially polarizing influence of the depression-based theme, there is an eye-catching intrigue created by the end of the world scenario. I took a look at the number of films released in each decade in this subgenre since the 1950s, and 2010 to 2019 saw the largest number ever released, over 110 titles. Now, we live in uncertain times, and clearly audiences enjoy the vicarious thrill of seeing what such scenarios might be like. Of course, the popular Hollywood approach would be to find a solution and save the world. Not so with von Trier. His interest is in seeing how individuals might react to the ultimate in bad news, depending on their state of mind. And Justine's calm and quiet acceptance is a clear counter to Claire's anxious despair and John's dramatic and almost cowardly suicide when he realises what is about to happen. So Justine's melancholia enables her to accept what fate has in store with an existential courage that is seemingly beyond those around her. And this sublime twist conveys an almost heroic status on Justine in the final moments of the film. A unique and powerful conclusion, quite unlike anything else we've seen on the big screen. So, to sum up, the key factors are authenticity, a truthful depiction of a state of mind, the visual opportunities, new techniques and profound referencing and use of music, finding an iconic character in an unexpected place, and the dramatic and intriguing narrative dimension as well. Next up is the German miniseries Babylon Berlin. Set in Berlin during the turbulent 1920s, this miniseries depicts life in the bustling city, a melting pot of extremes, from the wild and debauched partying of the swinging nightclubs to the extreme poverty faced by a multitude of families driven by rampant hyperinflation and market turmoil. And simultaneously, power struggles and instability created in the post-World War I years are fueling political extremism and organised crime. And into this heady mix appears Gerion Rath, a police inspector recently reassigned from Cologne. He is now part of Berlin's Vice Squad, operating in the darker recesses of this pleasure-seeking city. He also has a secret mission to find some particularly explicit movies which his powerful father is desperate for him to locate and destroy. So Gerion arrives carrying his own unique set of issues. He suffers from post-traumatic stress and a significant morphine addiction as a result of his wartime experiences. And during his investigations, he meets Charlotte Ritter, a young woman who leads two very different lives in order to support her struggling family. Now, by day, she works at the police headquarters as an archivist. However, come the evening, she supplements her income as an occasional prostitute at one of the city's most notorious nightclubs. And perhaps surprisingly, her dream is to become a detective within the homicide department. And just to make things a little bit more interesting, Russian revolutionaries have hijacked a train and are heading towards Berlin with a secret cargo. A turmoil-laden start to this expansive period crime drama, I think you'll agree. Let's remind ourselves. Here's a promo that was used at the time of its launch.
Die Bilder sind nach Fällen geordnet. Axtmord, gespaltener Schädel, Amputation.
Wir werden erwartet.
Und das muss alles mit.
Kein Wort zu niemandem. Sie haben dieses Bild nie gesehen.
Ich will zum Mord.
Du willst zum Mord. Da gibt's keine Frauen.
Guck mal, das Flittchen. Immer einen Zehner auftaschen.
Wer ist das?
Wieder. Die kenne ich.
Welche?
Klingt schwer nach einer russischen Angelegenheit.
Das sieht aber nicht nach einem Unfall aus.
Ja, wie? Nein.
Was willst du, Bruder?
Ich will nicht der Trottel sein, der die ganze Zeit im Dunkeln tagt.
Wir haben die Pflicht, ein Bollwerk gegen die Anarchie aufzubauen.
Беспрепятственно пересек границу и находится на пути в Берлин.
Du und der schnieke Kölner. Für meinen Geschmack ist der Herr ein bisschen zu neugierig.
Und was habe ich damit zu tun?
Find heraus, was er hier sucht.
Du weißt, wonach ich suche.
Du hast keine Ahnung, mit wem du es zu tun hast.
Co-produced by Sky Europe and the public broadcaster ARD, and reportedly Germany's most expensive TV series ever, at a total cost somewhere between 40 to 55 million euros, Babylon Berlin clearly qualified as a major event TV series. Indeed, it was something of a statement of intent on the part of Sky in terms of their commitment to producing high-end drama series. an early signal of the rise of European TV drama, the decline of acquired US fiction, and the rise of the global streamers who ultimately would radically change the marketplace. And from a viewer perspective, it is apparent right from the very first episode that this is a big budget spectacle in visual terms, via the expansive external scenes of life in Berlin in the 20s, as well as the lavish and extravagant sequences set inside nightclubs and the elaborately choreographed musical numbers, all of which help create a tangible level of intrigue as to what life was like in the city during this pivotal era between the two great wars. Now, at its core is the character of Gerion Rath, the war-damaged detective who is charged with not only patrolling the darker perimeters of Berlin's nightclub culture, but also resolving a task set by his influential father. And this character cocktail clearly taps into some of the more traditional tropes associated with the crime detective, such as his outsider status, impacted by PTS, secret drug addiction, and a hierarchical system within the police department that he doesn't always feel comfortable operating within. Gerion shares a variety of defining traits that mark him out from the norm. Furthermore, it is through his eyes that the audience experience not only the puzzle-solving mission that Gerion faces, but also the unique set of challenges he must overcome along the way. It is also ambitious in relation to its approach to the narrative storytelling, setting up a collection of contrasting characters in the early episodes, each of whom clearly have a dramatic role to play, but initially at least seemingly involved in rather separate storylines, aside perhaps from the Gerion-Charlotte relationship, which experiences some dramatic twists and turns in the early episodes. However, while this collectively makes for a truly distinctive and high-profile drama, and one which explores everything from violent murder to political intrigue, adult sexuality and organised crime, it also results in a series which demands a significant level of audience attention, and one where character motivation is far from straightforward, or indeed universally appealing. The end result is a drama which clearly dazzles from the outset on so many levels, but which is also arguably a little harder to engage with on an emotional level compared to many smaller scale and perhaps more intimate character-driven human dramas, which many European markets are known for. It's interesting to consider that this limitation in emotional connectivity has been accepted as something of a trade-off to ensure that it can emerge beyond solely being a German series for German audiences. The ability to embrace a much broader potential viewing base has become a strategic necessity, especially when production budgets are so high. And such an objective would seem to have been delivered upon its international sales, which have been reported to exceed 100 territories worldwide, including on the likes of Netflix, HBO Europe and Viaplay. Of course, domestic success remains a key measure of success or failure, and it is encouraging to see that the series has proved a consistent performer for ARD. Season 1, for example, averaged an 18% market share amongst the 3+ demo versus a primetime share average of 15%. Among the 14 to 49 demo, it drew a 21% share versus a share average of 9%. Among the 14 to 29 demo, it drew a 15% share versus a share average of 7%. Now in the UK, the series has aired on Sky Atlantic, and while perhaps less impressive than the German numbers, Season 1, for example, still managed to exceed the time-slot share average by a very healthy 65%. And gender-wise, it exceeded the benchmarks for both men and women. Demographically, it has also proved effective with the 35 to 44 and 55 to 64 audience groups, and while clearly having a solid attraction for the AB socio-economic sector. So overall, Babylon Berlin has demonstrated that European markets are more than capable of delivering big budget drama series, framed within an intriguing historical context and centered on a character or characters who can demonstrate universally appealing traits that can transcend parochial appeal and engage with diverse audiences around the world. So, to sum up, the key factors are the scale and the opportunity for production detail that brings an era to life, a lead character who delivers the right ingredients for the role, a plot line that involves physical challenges and mental puzzles, and not forgetting an ability to break out from parochial success only. The next series I'd like to focus on is Catherine the Great, the 4-part miniseries that aired on Sky Atlantic in the UK and HBO in the USA. Now, the series was produced by Origin Pictures, New Pictures and NBC Universal. Now, the series focuses on the romance between Catherine the Great and courtier Grigory Potemkin. In 1792, following a coup that ousted her husband, Catherine became Empress of Russia. An intelligent and progressive figure, Catherine frequently found herself battling suspicion in her attempts to reshape the country. However, she is drawn to the military officer Potemkin and champions his presence at court. Potemkin's unconventional style and devotion to Catherine draws the ire of his contemporaries. And Catherine's current lover, Grigory Orlov, and his brother Alexei conspire to oust him. However, Potemkin soon proves his worth on the field of battle, waging a successful campaign against the Turks and helping Catherine thwart a peasant rebellion. And his relationship with the Empress continues to deepen. Let's take a look at the trailer to refresh our collective memories.
Do you know who I am? I have survived in a world that does not want me.
When I first came here from Germany, I did not even speak the language.
She's a very clever and well-read woman.
But I fell in love with this country. Its passion.
She loves a lot of things.
A lot of men.
I'm for expansion. I'm for empire.
Does she love anything apart from power?
Do you think she even likes men? She eats them and spits them out. Sounds like an interesting proposition.
You are a very attractive man.
Coming from the most beautiful woman I have ever seen, that is indeed a compliment.
Come up to my private apartments. You may do whatever it is you think I want. But I will not share my throne with anyone.
You are the Empress, and he can be your devoted servant.
You think it's as simple as that? Men want power.
I want what any man wants, to make his own way, to find love.
The crown was never hers by right.
Russia must be ruled by a man.
This is my country. It would be a terrible mistake to go against me.
You love nobody but yourself.
I would like to remind you that you owe all of your advancement and all of your military power to me. I own you.
Why do I remind you I waded through blood for you?
I did what I did, and I wouldn't have had any of it any other way.
A lavish and opulent costume drama. Catherine the Great explores the later years of the Russian Empress and her unconventional romance with Potemkin. While the real Catherine has been the subject of many, so we say, salacious urban myths over the years, this drama largely eschews such sensationalism while exploring Catherine's progressive attitude and defiance of convention. Inevitably, much of the series' appeal is predicated around the presence of Helen Mirren in the title role. A seasoned and acclaimed performer in many respects, the part of Catherine is ideally suited to Mirren's screen persona. She's clearly capable of delivering a combination of unforgiving intelligence, humour, and a confident degree of sensuality to Catherine's depiction. This portrayal is then complemented by Jason Clarke's Potemkin, whose passion and unflinching dedication to Catherine was matched only by his occasionally impulsive behaviour. As such, this combination makes for an unusual on-screen romance, offering classically engaging traits, playfulness and passion, balanced with the potential for self-destruction, with the protagonist's comparative maturity adding a degree of distinction. And this relationship then plays out against a turbulent court background, with Catherine facing threats from the various intrigues and power plays of advisors, as well as outside forces. Now, overall, Catherine the Great proved to be an engaging drama, bolstered by strong casting in the lead roles, whose blend of romance and historical intrigue found an appreciative audience on both Sky Atlantic and HBO. It is interesting to note that one of the more recent content trends that has come to the fore is the presence and dominance of strong female characters, allied, not surprisingly, to compelling performances from the actress cast in such roles. During MIP this year, we saw a wide variety of upcoming series that were pivoted around female leads, across a broad range of backdrops and environments, making it one of the top 3 drama categories at the market. And MIPCOM 2021 saw this category also dominate the drama space, confirming that this is no passing fad, but one that has found both favour amongst creatives working in the drama space and the audience who consume the end product. Audiences seem particularly intrigued by characters who are outliers from the norm, those special people who can defy convention and see the world from a unique point of view, redefining in the process not only the boundaries of what is acceptable, but also the opportunities for change. Catherine's greatness, if you'll pardon the pun, is therefore in her status not only as a woman out of her time, but also one of those rare individuals whose sheer force of will can change the landscape. Of course, the series also operates in 2 other important spaces. Most obviously, there is the factual dimension relating to the true story of Catherine and the pivotal role she played in modernising or enlightening Russian society, telling the story of an intriguing and perhaps not especially well understood character who delivered a renaissance in both the sciences and national culture. The fact that she was also the country's longest ruling female leader makes her indisputably a potent and intriguing individual, a strong, empowered woman ruling across a turbulent era. Now, while there is a despotic angle to her personality, such cunning and smarts were essential for her survival, and once again elevate her into a league of her own. The other notable factor is the series' status as a period or historical drama. In terms of popularity, this broad categorization seems to hold an almost perennial appeal for creatives and audiences alike. Not only is it a space that is capable of delivering a rich and highly visual backdrop, it offers an escapist and compelling contrast to values and lifestyles of contemporary fiction. And once again, it's a category that featured strongly at both MIPCOM 21 and MIP 22. However, what is truly impressive is its ongoing popularity across multiple previous seasons and on the global stage. And of course, the contribution played by Helen Mirren and her performance cannot be underestimated. Not only does she bring a sense of glamour and Hollywood to the series, but her casting also helps audience make sense of Catherine. In lesser hands, a more ambivalent casting could have sent the wrong message and limited the audience's preparedness to sample and subsequently enjoy the journey on display. In terms of how the show played on Sky Atlantic, the series averaged around 270,000 viewers, securing a 1.3% share, well in excess of the benchmark share of around 0.34%. Gender-wise, the series delivered a balanced male-female viewership, and again beating benchmark levels. And in terms of its age profile, the skew was heavily towards the 45+ crowd, with the 65+ group taking top honours. Socioeconomically, and perhaps not surprisingly, the bias was markedly towards the AB group. And from a sales perspective, it is interesting to note that aside from Sky in the UK and HBO in the US, the series has also sold to the likes of Poland, Czech Republic, Canada, Australia, France, Israel. And in performance terms, it has also proved to be successful in markets as diverse as Australia and the Czech Republic and Italy. To sum up the key factors: a strong and effective lead female character, the potential for an actress to excel in that role, an intriguing factual dimension centered on a woman out of her time, changing her world, the historical period drama backdrop, and the strong visual opportunities it offers, and the balanced male-female appeal. Next up comes the UK series Hinterland, a crime drama set in and around Aberystwyth in West Wales. Now, season 1 played originally on S4C, which is the Welsh language free-to-air channel, with a repeat airing on BBC4 in 2014. And Richard Harrington stars as Inspector Tom Mathias, who has come back to Wales after a spell in the Metropolitan Police in London. He and his team investigate a different case each week. The team comprise Detective Marid Rees, Detective Commissioner Lloyd Ellis, Detective Sergeant Sian Owens, and their boss, Chief Superintendent Brian Prosser. Now, in the first episode, a woman in her 60s has disappeared. Her seafront home shows evidence of a violent struggle. Now, following a lead, Mathias finds her body in a river near a local beauty spot, the Devil's Bridge, a location miles inland. Now, it later transpires that she ran a children's home near the bridge from 1979 to 1996, and to those associated with the home she was much feared, and eventually she was accused of mistreating the children in her care. The first hint that this could be a killing with revenge at its core. Let's take a look at the trailer.
What happened to you?
Nothing.
No children, no close family. Wasn't at chapel this morning. He came to check to see she was okay. Found the door wide open and the carnage inside.
Where were you last night? Were you running away because you did something you were ashamed of? I didn't! I think she was murdered because of something that happened in that home, Byron. Did you say that the devil would come and take away your soul, that you'll burn in hell forever for your sins? Did you kill her? How could I harm a hair on her head? Do you think I came here by choice?
The official line is that you did. You went up there on your own. Did you sleep with her? Did you?
Is Daddy still in the house with you now?
The night is fast spent, the day is at hand. Let us therefore cast off the works of darkness and let us put on the armor of light.
Yeah, it's as clear as day when you know what you're looking for. All the pain, all the suffering, it ends here. It ends now.
The core appeal lies in the murder mystery format and the subsequent police investigation. A series of clues, a number of suspects, a variety of red herrings, twists and turns, all the usual tropes of the traditional crime drama genre. However, closer inspection reveals Hinterland to be a more challenging, less escapist proposition. As with its Nordic compatriot Wallander, each episode is a dark and intense affair. Individual narratives unfold at a slow pace. There is also a strong sense of dread, amplified by the fact that each of the victims suffered a violent death, and their backstories are often involving sordid secrets from past lives, and a number of the supporting characters have clearly been traumatized by the events under investigation. For example, Episode 1 features child abuse, a deep-seated, if unhinged, desire to avenge a wrong, and even some ominous Celtic symbolism. And like so much Nordic crime fiction, the grim, melancholic atmosphere is reinforced by the rain, bleak landscapes, and in this instance, an out-of-season seaside resort as the central location. At the centre is Tom Mathias, a talented policeman, but a man of few words and quiet, brooding intensity. Another feature he shares with the previously mentioned Wallander. Now, lacking much in the way of warmth and charisma, it is not made clear whether he has returned to Wales for personal or professional reasons, but he lives in a cliff-top caravan, again for reasons unexplained, which reinforces his lone wolf image. And although he has a team under him, Mathias spends much of the cases on his own, making all the vital breakthroughs himself, and this draws attention away from the possibility of much in the way of teamwork, a familiar ingredient in many more mainstream approaches. The supporting police officers make little impression, and although the character Reese is clearly the number 2 on the team, they don't really work much together. Mathias is a loner and an outsider who clearly carries some dark secrets of his own, and subsequent series used the prospect of such revelations to excellent effect. Now, this dominant emphasis on a single lead character is something of a double-edged sword, putting a lot of responsibility on Mathias, but limiting the possibility of the character ensemble adding much in the way of audience appeal. While Mathias's complexity delivers a richness to his character, he remains a difficult individual, taciturn, humourless, and very much not a people person. Now, this might seem to be an odd recipe. The truth of the matter is that the detective as a character is often most successful when demonstrating a mix of flaws, quirks, and skilled insights. Detectives are not ordinary people. They possess something rare, an ability to dispassionately filter information and the darkest motivations of the human species. But this comes with a price. An intensity, dedication, and focus that often intrudes on personal relationships and normal lives. They can even be considered as damaged because of the path they follow. But the audience need to know that this is the case if these individuals are to be trusted with delivering the truth. This outsider status is found in a wide range of the most successful investigators depicted on TV. And Mathias easily slips into this profile, with significant questions surrounding why he is like he is, and what is the secret that clearly lies in his past, and what has motivated him to take the role of detective in a remote Welsh community as winter begins to descend. Hinterland is a crime drama very much in line with the current vogue for darker themed stories. It proved to have appeal for a more discerning audience who embraced its often introspective, intense, and even dour mood and approach. In terms of its transmission on BBC4, Season 1 averaged a 2.8 share, comfortably exceeding the channel's time slot average of 1.7%. In terms of its gender profile, the bar chart reveals how the show exceeded the benchmarks for both men and women. Age-wise, it appealed to a distinctly older audience, in keeping with the profile of BBC4, a highbrow linear service noted for its ability to secure a dedicated and loyal, if older, viewership, as illustrated in the middle graphic. And from a socio-economic point of view, it clearly found acceptance from a highly selective and educated audience who are looking for a viewing experience outside of the mainstream. The strong AB bias is clearly visible. So overall, a notable success for the minority BBC4 service. And one final point relates to the very specific regional backdrop of West Wales. With a Welsh language version existing in parallel to the English language episodes, clearly one of the key objectives was to deliver a drama that not only featured the environment visually, but also quite literally spoke to the local audience. This inclusive approach benefits the Welsh-speaking audience, but also provides content that can travel across national boundaries. And aside from airing in the UK, the series has sold to key European and Nordic markets, such as Germany, Ireland, Finland, Belgium, the Netherlands, as well as more disparate markets such as Mexico, Brazil, India, South Korea and many others. A further demonstration of the global audience's interest in all things crime investigation themed and centred on complex, gifted and somewhat fractured detectives. To sum up, the key factors: a flawed lead character, an isolated outsider, fractured by what he does. The environment, reflecting the grim, melancholic atmosphere. The murder investigation setup and the usual tropes attached. And an ability to speak to a local audience without being exclusive. Next up, My Brilliant Friend. This adaptation of Elena Ferrante's 4 Neapolitan novels tells the story of a special friendship that develops between 2 young girls growing up in a poor district of Naples in the 1950s. The quartet of novels have sold close to 1 million copies in the UK and 1.8 million in Italy, and it's estimated that the book series has overall sold 10 million copies in 40 countries. Told in flashback, the mature Elena Greco, known as Lenu, writes the story of her intertwining life with her closest friend Leela, who, according to her son, has disappeared. The narrative recounts their friendship, following them from their first meeting when they were at school together, through their teenage years and beyond. Now, Leela and Lenu are both very bright young girls, but the spirited Leela is particularly talented. Born into poverty, however, in a neighbourhood where people live tooth by jowl, and a few powerful families rule the roost, their chances of escaping their downtrodden lives are slim. And while Leno is lucky enough to have a father who is willing to make sacrifices in order to support her further education and into teenage life, Leela is forced to withdraw from school, and her life takes a very different path to that of her friend and ally. Now, as teenagers, while both struggle with relationships and romantic dalliances, Leela has to work in her family's shoe repair shop, while Lenu is able to continue her studies, causing their lives to take increasingly different paths. Let's remind ourselves with a trailer for the series.
Questo non può continuare a studiare. E meglio tu non ci vai.
Tanti l'esame, lo faccio stesso.
E vostra figlia è brava così in tutte le altre materie. Parlate con vostro marito, fatelo ragionare.
E allora perché mi sta a studiare solito che è pure femmina?
Perché ci bravo proprio io. Ma parla con me, sta il fratello ricevendo esso.
Rino, ma basta.
Ma capito che...
E basta! Questa cosa la scolamente, non la voglio sentire più.
Elena! Scina, io vengo poco. Ma vengo. Crei, non te ne importa. Quello che fai tu o faccio io.
Mi convinsi che niente potesse fermarmi. Ogni sua disobbedienza aveva sbocchi che per la meraviglia toglievano il fiato.
Sono proprio contenta di vederti, Leno. Anche io.
Now, the series was commissioned by Rai Fiction, HBO in the US, and Tim Vision, the Italian VOD service. When the TV series launched on HBO in the USA, it was the first non-English language series to air on the highly influential premium service. Now, in recent years, one of the key trends in the international drama space has been the development of ideas that are based on either classic literature, titles or popular fiction novels. And having a pre-existing IP is a particular value when it comes down to audience familiarity, market visibility, and the promotional campaign budget. And My Brilliant Friend ticks all the right boxes in this respect. The review aggregation site Rotten Tomatoes registered a 93% score on its critical measure, along with a 91% average audience score for season 1, underlining not only its status as a quality-led piece of drama, but also one that can secure a determined loyalty from the audience who choose to view. I've also previously mentioned the value that can be attached to the overall veracity of a project. Now, one of the first requests HBO made to director Saverio Costanza was to make sure that the series would be spoken in a distinct local dialect. Their reason for making such a request, when their audience would be watching with the aid of subtitles, was that they wanted the series to feel authentic. Now, ultimately, the series used the Neapolitan dialect, which is a thick regional dialect that even many Italians find difficult to understand. Now, this question of original language has become more significant in recent years. We've all witnessed the rise of Scandi noir, a scripted crime fiction genre written from a police point of view and set in the Nordic regions, featuring the local language. Now, conventional wisdom had been that such foreign drama would never catch on with audiences. However, the likes of The Killing, The Bridge, and many more have slowly changed this view, and slowly but surely audiences have evolved to be far more accepting of such culturally diverse content. The influence of the global streamers also became significant, with their technology allowing audiences to select whether to view subtitled or dubbed versions of shows from around the world. In September 2021, Netflix launched Squid Game, the South Korean phenomena that became the top viewed program in 94 countries, attracting more than 142 million member households and amassing 1.65 billion viewing hours during its first 4 weeks from launch, surpassing Bridgerton for the title of most watched show. What was once a hurdle has now become something of value, as audiences have begun to shift their view, having been repeatedly exposed to more diverse global content. And from the perspective of the character framework, Leela and Lenu clearly give the series a strong female focus. They clearly dominate the character landscape and provide the series with a very personal focus on the intimate and intense relationship they share. Their story is essentially a coming-of-age narrative, made all the more powerful by its focus on childhood and growing up. This was further underscored by the remarkable performances that have accompanied each season. So overall, this might suggest a rather one-sided demographic skew to the series, focusing on the female audience's interest in exploring the relationship between Leela and Lenu. What redresses this bias somewhat is the series' more visceral presentation of the everyday violence that surrounds them, with oblique references to everything from crime family culture to a level of everyday aggression that also appears, such as domestic violence and school bullying in particular, seemingly occurring on a regular basis. Now, with its extended cast, framed around the various families that live side by side in the local community, and leisurely pace, My Brilliant Friend is very much a guilty pleasure, lacking the outlandish story twists that populate many more recent examples of premium fiction, especially in the streaming world. And as a result, it is highly dependent on the loyalty created by its detailed character exposition and its ability to create a world of its own. Of course, having an original IP that has inspired a fierce and dedicated following is also incredibly valuable. Now, the series debuted in Italy on Rai 1 in November 2018. Season 1 averaged an impressive 30% share amongst the 4+ demo, versus a time slot average of 19%. Among the 15 to 64 demo, the series averaged a 27% share versus a 16% time-slot average. And amongst the 15 to 34s, the series averaged a 24% share versus a 13% time-slot average. So overall, a notable success for the public broadcaster Rai. And in terms of the UK, Season 1 delivered clear growth on an episode-by-episode basis, eventually outpacing the time-slot average. And demographically, it delivered a balanced male-female viewership, and by age group, it skewed most effectively towards the 55-plus sector. In terms of international sales, the series has been sold to the UK, USA, Australia, Sweden, Finland, Germany, Turkey, the Netherlands, France, and of course Spain, to name but a few. And apart from Italy, the series was particularly effective in Finland and Belgium, with France, Sweden, and the Netherlands also delivering solid numbers. Now, the last jigsaw piece in the timeline of this project's evolution came in March this year, when it was confirmed that the series had been renewed for a fourth and final season, a fitting conclusion to this acclaimed series. To sum up, the key factors are therefore a strong and effective lead female characters, an evocative sense of place, a balanced demographic appeal, and a strong IP. Finally, I'd like to look at the theatrical documentary, something a little different to the scripted examples we've looked at so far. In 2015, director Asif Kapadia released his documentary Amy, telling the story of singer-songwriter Amy Winehouse. Now, Kapadia had already worked in a similar documentary space with his 2010 project Senna, which told the story of the life and death of Formula One driver Ayrton Senna. This project relied primarily on archive racetrack footage and home video clips provided by the Senna family, rather than retrospective video interviews. It also avoided using a formal voiceover commentary. Kapadia saw an opportunity to use a similar approach in telling the story of Amy Winehouse. Now, Winehouse was a once-in-a-generation talent whose rapid ascendancy propelled her to 6 Grammy Awards and global recognition. Her huge success, however, resulted in relentless and invasive media attention, which, coupled with Amy's troubled relationships and somewhat edgy lifestyle, saw her life tragically begin to unravel, and ultimately she died from alcohol poisoning in July 2011 at the age of 27. Kapadia's approach was once again to use extensive, unseen archive footage, as well as previously unheard musical performances by Winehouse herself. The end result is a powerful, honest and acclaimed examination of the fractured relationship between art and pop culture celebrity. Let's take a look at the trailer that was used for its release.
Oh, it's a bit upsetting at the end, isn't it?
She was highly intelligent, the most intelligent person I knew.
She was so utterly authentic.
Amy, just give us a smile and then we can turn the camera off.
You promise?
She had such an emotional relationship to music.
You're becoming an artist in the public eye.
The more people see of me, the more they'll realise that all I'm good for is making music.
And the Grammy goes to Amy Winehouse.
She was one of the truest artists I ever heard.
The world wanted a piece of her.
Amy was a girl that just wanted to be loved.
I fell in love with someone who I would have died for. And that's like a real drug, isn't it?
This is someone who is trying to disappear.
The thing is, I don't think I'm going to be at all famous. I'm not a girl trying to be a star.
I'm just a girl that sings.
The rise and fall of Amy Winehouse makes for a compelling, if ultimately sad, experience, but it clearly touched a nerve upon its release. With a budget in the region of just $3.4 million, it eventually returned a global box office figure of around $24 million. And in terms of the profit and loss accountancy of the theatrical world, Amy can be considered a significant success. It also scored highly on the review aggregator Rotten Tomatoes, with their unique metric based on the opinions of hundreds of film and TV critics scoring a remarkable 95%. Their audience score, based on the percentage of users who rated the project positively, stands at an impressive 87%. Now, in order to understand the reasons behind its success, we should first reflect on the current state of play when it comes to the documentary genre. Perhaps contrary to popular belief, theatrical documentary success remains quite rare. Equally, regional tastes and preferences play a big role in determining a project's ability to perform. While a topic might work well for domestic US audiences, it may have little resonance elsewhere. The exception to this rule, one of them at least, is the music-themed documentary genre. A genre that has that rare ability to cross international borders and cultures with relative ease. The 2013 documentary One Direction, This Is Us, delivered over $68 million worldwide, with 58% of the box office coming from the international market, compared to 42% from the domestic US. Now, Amy managed to exceed this ratio with nearly 65% coming from international and 35% from domestic US. Now, of course, the global music business is heavily predicated on the marketing of pop icons, and a face can deliver pretty much instant familiarity around the world. However, when the package is made more complex by a tragic narrative and an outcome that threatens to subvert the good feeling expectations of the marketing-led music business, the limitations of the genre do tend to quickly come into sharp focus and translate into the harsh reality of a more limited production budget. Now, ultimately, the theatrical documentary business remains a difficult and risk-laden path to follow. However, quite the opposite can be said of TV. Documentary has come into its own over the past 10 years or so. And in recent years, we've heard a lot about the scripted marketplace as we live through a period that has become described as peak drama. However, while the glamorous world of scripted drama has dominated the headlines, documentary has been evolving and enjoying its own upsurge in activity. However, documentary was for many years something of a filler option, unlikely to make for appointment TV with the audience. As such, it was considered to be something of an uncompetitive and minority-skewed part of the content market, a cottage industry outshone by its more glamorous scripted partners. How the market has changed. Documentary is now regarded as a serious, popular and globally consumed by this same market. And one factor in this rise in interest has been the appetite shown by the global OTTs, whose algorithms have identified a growing audience interest in approaches that offer unique insights into factual worlds. And platforms such as Netflix and Amazon now routinely feature an array of documentary content, and it is clearly playing a key role in driving their subscription renewals. Now, of course, linear TV platforms have also embraced the genre, from the public service broadcasters through to the premium players, continuing a tradition that began many years previously. Now, a key factor that has contributed to the rise of the genre is the simple fact that the creators have become much more sophisticated in their ability to tell stories, engage the audience, impress visually, and demand their attention. With an almost limitless scope and range of topics to explore, documentary makers are now highly adept at finding the most compelling ways into difficult and complex subject matter and taking the audience with them. And then there is the importance and value of documentaries' basis in fact. Now, obviously, audiences live in a world which is increasingly difficult to separate fact from fiction, or at least the hearsay. And being able to trust your curator is not only appealing, but also fundamentally important. In a post-truth culture, many of us feel insecure and confused about the state of the world and are unwilling to trust the words of politicians and so-called leaders. It is perhaps not surprising that we're turning to things like documentaries to try and get beneath the surface of the world and work out for ourselves what is going on. And not only does the audience want the truth, they also want to be able to believe that what is on offer is honest and true in its depictions of events, situations, motivations, even if they venture into the darker spaces of human existence. When Amy premiered on TV in the UK, airing on Channel 4 in January 2016, it drew an average audience in excess of 2.3 million viewers, peaking at over 2.6 million viewers. With an audience share of around 10.2%, it proved to be a competitive alternative to ITV, the primary commercial linear broadcaster in the market. And in terms of gender, female viewers took the upper hand, outpacing the benchmark, reflecting the interest a strong and attitudinal female character can provoke amongst female viewers. Now, in age group terms, it drew solid support from the 35+ crowd, perhaps reflecting Winehouse's appeal to a more mature audience who respond to the heart and soul of her voice, the honesty of her lyrics and the emotion of her performances. And from a socio-economic perspective, the split was effectively balanced, a clear sign of Winehouse's classless appeal. She was a down-to-earth character who wore her London accent with pride, and this emotional, factual and unique documentary readily found an audience committed to finding out more about this singing icon. The key factors are therefore: the documentary approach has an inherent value, its value on TV, documentary is currently strong, offering an accurate factual basis, again, is key, and that the audience will know the subject in a way that is new. So, overall, in terms of any general markers for assessing a script, clearly gauging the potential of a script is something that requires an immersed awareness of where audience tastes currently sit. So doing your homework is vital, and watching TV and going to the movies are key in this respect. There's also a key difference between reading for a TV series versus a theatrical outline or script. Documentary requires a different set of criteria again. And then, of course, there is the more fundamental question of what is the balance between the commercial value and the artistic merit. Personally, I think a combination is absolutely essential. It's just, where on the scale does it sit? So for a TV series project, here the focus is on the character development. Do we gain a clear understanding of who the characters are? Do we care about them? Do they make sense given the genre? And what is their capacity to grow and evolve, positively or negatively? Requiring the fact that particular genres have specific requirements. Detectives need to have insights into the darker side of humanity. Doctors need to have a special ability when it comes to the healing process. It could be a medical insight or an encyclopedic mind. A humanity cuts through just when it's needed. However, if you like, this can be boiled down in its simplest to the following 4 factors. Clarity, in terms of narrative or direction. Characters, are they effectively established? Momentum and atmosphere, is it engaging and involving? And finally, the hook, is there a reason to return? In terms of theatricals, while characterization is still important, the story space is still the most important driver. How unique is the narrative on offer? Have I seen it all before, or is it something fresh or refreshing? I can look at the track record and see where the problems have occurred. Is that the case here? And finally, in terms of documentary, Here I'm looking for an opportunity to deliver something with an essential truth attached. Is it a take on a subject I think I know well that surprises me? Is the style of production suited to the subject matter? I could go on, but I won't. But I will follow this presentation with a short Q&A session, so feel free to bombard me with questions in person if you like. So that's all I have time for today, but I should first thank you for taking time to stay the course, hopefully. And again, hopefully I've managed to explore some of the key factors that have contributed to the success of the 6 properties I've tracked, and given you some, if you like, food for thought about the narrative recipes on display and just what is it that the audience is looking for. Now, some people say content is king. My feeling is that it could be rewritten as the audience is king. Would make more sense, as without them we are nothing. Thank you.